This is the fat burning code. It's a simple concept that many people get wrong, and it's costing them their results. So if you are struggling to lose body fat, this video will help you crack the code. We lines go over the science behind how fat loss works and how to apply it for real-life success. So there are only 3 steps in the fat burning code, but we're gonna go over some other things first because they're important to understand. Now, the first thing to know is that you have to be in a calorie deficit to burn body fat. This means you need to consume less energy than you burn, and I like to keep it really simple and just say eat less than you do now. And when you're doing this, you want to focus on eating less of these foods right here because they're high in calories, low in nutrients, and very filling. But more on that later because there's something else you need to know first. You see, when you're in a calorie deficit, your body will tap into one of 2 fuel sources, either stored carbohydrates or stored fats. And which one you tap into depends on how aggressive you are with your diet. If you aren't very aggressive and you keep most of your carbs, you'll primarily use those stored carbs for fuel. And this makes sense because carbs turn into energy much faster than fats do. In fact, carbs turn into energy almost instantly. However, if you go super low carb, like below 20 grams of net carbs per day, then you'll start tapping into your stored body fat for energy instead. Now, this takes longer to turn into energy compared to carbs, but the benefit is that there's an unlimited amount of stored fat on your body compared to the limited amount of stored carbs. Now, once you've tapped into this fat store for fuel, your body will start to release fatty acids into the bloodstream, and these can then be used by your muscles as fuel. And this process is called lipolysis. Now, since you're tapping into a new fuel source, your body has to make some adjustments so that it can actually use this fat for energy. This is why when you go low carb, you often feel tired and weak for the first few days until your body adjusts and starts running off of fat. But after your body adjusts, you may notice that you have tons of energy all of a sudden, and that's because you now have access to an unlimited amount of fuel. Your muscles are now able to use this fuel source because your body has finished making the necessary adjustments, and this is why going super low carb is so effective for fat loss. You have more energy, you feel better, and you tap into an unlimited fuel source while still getting really good results from the diet. However, there's another reason why going low carb is so effective. When you go low carb, your insulin levels drop, and this allows other hormones to come in and start breaking down body fat. For example, glucagon comes in and stimulates lipolysis while insulin normally would inhibit it. Another hormone that comes in is adrenaline. This is why going low carb is beneficial for someone who wants to do intermittent fasting because you get a boost of adrenaline, and we know that adrenaline helps mobilize body fat. And finally, we have cortisol. Cortisol will come in and help mobilize body fat when your insulin levels are low, which is exactly what happens when you're following the fat burning code. These hormones work together to break down body fat, and this is why you lose body fat much faster when you go low carb compared to when you don't. And it's not just theory either. We have studies that show that low-carb diets lead to more fat loss than regular diets. In this study, overweight participants were put on either a low-carb diet or a regular diet, and after 6 months, the low-carb group lost almost twice as much weight and body fat as the control group. In this next study, participants were put on either a low-carb diet or a low-fat diet, and again the low-carb group blew the low-fat group away. After 6 months, the low-carb group lost 3 times as much weight as the low-fat group. The same thing happened with body fat percentage. The low-carb group lost 4.6% body fat compared to only 1.8% in the low-fat group. Low carb is clearly superior for fat loss, and going low carb is great for dieting because it also suppresses appetite. The reason why is because the ketones produced by your liver from the fat that you reburning actually cross the blood-brain barrier, and they send signals to your brain that you refull. And this is why you lines often find yourself wanting to eat less when you re-low carb compared to when you re-not. With all of this in mind, you might think that you should go as low carb as possible to burn as much fat as possible. And generally speaking, this is true, but you shouldn't go so low that you can't maintain it. Going to low is the same as starting out to aggressive. Eventually your body will adjust, but you could be in for a world of hurt in the beginning. Instead, you want to find the lowest amount of carbs that you can tolerate. You don't have to find your exact numbers, but if you're new to low carb, I recommend anywhere between 20 and 50 grams of net carbs per day. Just go low enough so that you tap into fat burning and you have energy. Then over time, you can lower your carbs further and further if you want. But it's much better to start out slow and be consistent than to start out too aggressive and burn out. Another thing that you have to consider is exercise. You won't be able to eat the same amount of calories as someone who exercises daily. If you want to calculate how many calories you should be eating per day, I recommend using this calculator right here. Simply plug in your information and it will give you an estimate of how many calories you should be eating to lose body fat. So now that we got all that out of the way, let's go over the actual fat burning code. There are only 3 steps, but the last one is the most important. So make sure you watch till the end. First, you need to eat very few carbs, like we talked about. Second, you need to eat plenty of protein. Protein helps you retain muscle while you're in a calorie deficit, and it helps suppress your appetite. And finally, third, you need to cut out liquid calories. Liquid calories are extremely high in calories, and they're usually low in nutrients. They also don't fill you up at all. This is why liquid calories are a leading cause of failed fat loss attempts. I know a lot of people will argue that protein shakes are an exception to this rule, but in my opinion, they are not, because they do fill you up and they come with a lot of extra benefits like increased muscle retention, increased strength, and increased recovery. But if you don't want to use protein shakes, then try to eat solid food instead. That way you chew your food and you have more control over how much you eat. Those are the 3 main steps to the fat burning code. But there are a couple more things that you need to know. One is that losing body fat isn't entirely under your control. Yes, you heard that, right? There are things outside of your control that affect how fast you lose body fat. For example, hormones and genetics play a big role in determining how well you can build muscle and burn fat. With that said, you shouldn't use it as an excuse. If someone else can lose weight, then so can you. Sometimes it'll be slower, but eventually you'll get there. Another thing that's out of your control is the scale. A lot of people focus too much on the number on the scale, and that's a mistake because you can lose inches from your waist without losing pounds. For example, you could lose water weight temporarily, but that doesn't mean you're not making progress. So instead of obsessing over the number on the scale, take measurements instead. Measure your chest, your arm, your waist, and your hips, and record them in a notebook. Then compare them every week. If they're getting smaller, you're making progress. And finally, I want to talk about cardio. Cardio gets a bad rap in the fitness industry, but the truth is that you should be doing it. Studies show that cardio helps you burn more fat, even though you might not think it does. What you should focus on is doing cardio that burns the most amount of calories, like sprinting, swimming, and cycling. Avoid long duration, low-intensity cardio because it tends to burn more glycogen and less fat. So that about wraps it up. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have, make sure you stay tuned for more content. Also, if you'd like any extra help with your diet, so that's about it. I'll see you guys soon.